My boss stole my work. Just research, she said. Then I played my recording. My boss stole my work and credit. So I recorded her and made her pay the price. What's the moment that made you decide being nice wasn't working anymore? I used to be the person everyone called when they needed something. The one who would drop everything to help a friend move or stay late at work to finish someone else's project. My boss would text me at 11 p.m. and I'd respond immediately. I'd cover shifts when coworkers called in sick. I'd volunteer for the projects nobody wanted. I was raised to believe kindness would always come back to you. For 5 years at Davidson Media, I was the first to arrive and last to leave. I helped my coworkers meet their deadlines. I brought coffee for the team when everyone was stressed. I even let my boss Diane take credit for my ideas during presentations because she said it would look better coming from management. When my dad got sick last year, I asked Diane if I could work remotely 2 days a week so I could drive him to chemo. She sighed and said, "We really need you in the office, but I suppose we can make it work for a month or two." I was so grateful that I worked twice as hard on my office days, making sure nothing fell through the cracks. Dad's treatment was supposed to last 6 months, but after 3 months, Diane called me into her office. She said the remote arrangement wasn't working. The team needed me physically present every day, and besides, it had been long enough. I explained that Dad was only halfway through treatment. He couldn't drive himself and had no one else. She just stared at me until I lowered my eyes and said, "I understand." I spent the next week burning through my savings to hire drivers for Dad. I was exhausted, constantly worried about him, but still the first one in the office every morning. Then came the Maxwell Project, a huge account that could make or break our quarter. I spent weeks researching, building the pitch, creating mock-ups, everything. I even missed one of Dad's appointments to finish it. The day before the presentation, Diane asked to see my materials. I handed over everything, including my presentation notes. The next morning, I arrived early, excited to present my work, only to find the conference room already full. Diane was at the head of the table, showing my slides to the clients. I stood in the doorway frozen as she used my exact words, my research, my ideas. When she saw me, she smiled and said, "Oh, good. Jennifer, can you grab coffee for everyone? We're just getting started." The client turned, saw me, and said, "Aren't you presenting this?" Before I could answer, Diane jumped in and said, "Oh no, this is my project. Jennifer just helped with some research. I got the coffee." I stood in the back of the room and watched as she was praised for my work. The client loved it. They signed a 3-year contract, the biggest in company history. When the executives came down to congratulate the team, Diane accepted all the praise. She got a bonus. She got a promotion. I got a $50 gift card to Starbucks. That night, Dad called. He'd fallen trying to get from the taxi to his front door. He had been lying on the ground for 20 minutes before a neighbor found him. If I had been there, I kept thinking if I had just been there. 2 days later, the company held a celebration for the Maxwell deal. Diane was given an award. I stood and clapped with everyone else. Then came the announcement that made everything stop. Diane would now head up a new division created specifically for the Maxwell account, and she needed a strong team. She spent 10 minutes talking about the qualities she was looking for, then announced her first hire. Ryan, the guy who had been with the company for 6 months and hadn't contributed a single thing to the project. I sat there stunned as everyone congratulated him. Then Diane looked at me and said, "Jennifer, I need those quarterly reports by end of day. I know you won't let me down." Something broke inside me. 5 years. 5 years of saying yes, of staying late, of missing time with my sick father. 5 years of watching others take credit for my work. 5 years of being nice. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and stared at myself in the mirror. My hands were shaking. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. That was the moment. That exact moment when I decided being nice wasn't working anymore. I walked back into that celebration with a strange calm I'd never felt before. It was like watching myself from outside my body. As I approached Diane, who was laughing with the executives about plans for the new division without thinking, I tapped her on the shoulder and said, "I need to speak with you right now." She gave me that patronizing smile, the one that said, "Not now, sweetie. The adults are talking." But I didn't move. I just stared at her until her smile faltered. "Fine, Jennifer. What is it?" she said with clear annoyance. "I think we should discuss this privately," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Everyone was looking at us now. She couldn't dismiss me without making a scene, so she followed me to a quiet corner. "What's so urgent that it couldn't wait?" she asked, checking her watch like my time was worthless. "I want to know why Ryan is being moved to the Maxwell team when I created the entire presentation, the research, the pitch, everything." Diane's eyes narrowed just slightly before that fake smile returned. Jennifer, we've discussed this. It was a team effort, and as your manager, I decided how to allocate the resources. I felt something bubbling inside me, something hot and unfamiliar anger. I'm not talking about the presentation anymore. I'm talking about the team assignments for the account I developed. I deserve to be on that team. She laughed. Actually laughed. Deserving has nothing to do with it. Ryan has the right presence for client-facing roles. You're more of a behind-the-scenes person, Jennifer. And that's where you excel behind the scenes. I repeated slowly. Do you mean doing all the work while others take the credit? Her face hardened. Watch your tone. This isn't productive. Let's talk when you've calmed down. I didn't realize I was raising my voice until I saw people turning to look. So productive like me, staying until midnight working on the Maxwell presentation while you were at your son's basketball game. Diane stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Jennifer, I think you should take the rest of the day off. Clearly, you're not in a professional mindset right now. I almost did it. I almost backed down, apologized, and scurried away like I always did. But then my phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. Dad had been admitted after his fall, more serious than they initially thought, possible internal bleeding. I looked up at Diane. I'm not taking the day off. I'm quitting. I'm done being your workhorse. I'm done watching you take credit for my ideas. I'm done sacrificing my family for this job where I'm not valued or respected. She switched tactics instantly, her voice softening. Jennifer, don't be hasty. You're upset. I understand, but you're a valuable member of the team. I almost laughed. The first time you've ever said that to me is when I'm quitting. People were definitely staring now. One of the executives was walking over looking concerned. Is everything okay over here? He asked. No, it's not, I said before Diane could speak. I've just resigned because I'm tired of having my work stolen by my manager. The entire Maxwell presentation was mine. Every slide, every word, every concept. But Diane presented it as her own. The executive, Ted Wilson, looked surprised. Jennifer, these are serious accusations. They're not accusations. They're facts, I said, feeling strangely powerful. I have the original files on my personal drive with creation dates. I have emails where I sent drafts to Diane. I even have the research notes in my handwriting. Diane's face had gone pale. This is ridiculous. She's being emotional because of personal issues. Her father is sick, and she's not handling the stress well. I felt a flash of rage at her using my father's illness against me. That was it. The final straw. I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and forwarded something to Ted's address. You'll find I just sent you the original presentation with all my notes, including the comments where Diane specifically asked me to remove my name from the presenter section. You'll also find the recording I made of our conversation last month where she told me, and I quote, "Just do the work and let me handle the client." I need this win for my promotion. I hadn't actually planned to send that recording. I'd made it for my own sanity to remind myself I wasn't crazy, but now it felt like divine intervention that I had it. Diane's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Ted checked his phone, his expression changing as he opened the email. Jennifer, let's discuss this in my office, he said quietly. I shook my head. I'm done discussing. I'm done working here. I'm done being nice. I have to go to the hospital. My dad needs me. I'll email HR my resignation. I turned to walk away when Ted said, wait, this is concerning information. We need to address this. I looked back at them. Diane's face was a mixture of shock and fury. Ted looked genuinely troubled. Address it however you want, I said. I won't be here. As I walked toward the exit, I heard my name being called by several people, but I didn't turn around. I just kept walking past the shocked faces of coworkers who had never seen nice, accommodating Jennifer stand up for herself. Outside the building, I took a deep breath. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in 5 years. I got in my car and drove straight to the hospital. Dad was pale against the white sheets, but he smiled when he saw me. Hey kiddo, shouldn't you be at work? I took his hint. They can manage without me. I'm where I need to be. Over the next few days, while Dad recovered, I got dozens of calls and texts from coworkers. Some expressing shock, others support. A few even shared stories of how Diane had taken advantage of their work too. I ignored most of them, focusing on Dad and what would come next. A week later, while Dad was napping in his hospital room, I finally checked my email. There was a message from Ted Wilson asking me to call him when I had a moment. Curious, I stepped into the hallway and dialed his number. Jennifer, thank you for calling, he said, sounding genuinely relieved. I've been hoping to speak with you. What can I do for you, Ted? I asked professionally, even though I no longer worked there. After reviewing the materials you sent and conducting several interviews, we've terminated Diane's employment. Her actions constituted a clear violation of our ethics policy. I hadn't expected that. Oh, I said, not knowing what else to say. He continued, we'd like to offer you her position. I nearly dropped the phone. What? The Maxwell team needs a leader. Someone who knows the account inside and out. Someone who did the actual work. That someone is you. I leaned against the wall trying to process this. The promotion Diane had gotten was now being offered to me. I appreciate the offer, Ted, but I'm not sure I want to come back. There was a pause. Then Ted said, we're prepared to offer a significant compensation increase, full remote work options for your family situation, and back pay for the bonus Diane received for your work. I thought about Dad, about the medical bills piling up, about the fact that despite everything I did enjoy the creative aspects of my job, just not the way I'd been treated. What about the company culture that allowed this to happen in the first place? I asked. Why didn't anyone notice or speak up before now? Ted sighed. That's a fair question and one we're addressing company-wide. We've started a review of all management practices and reporting structures. I won't pretend we didn't fail you, Jennifer, but I'm asking for the chance to make it right. I told him I needed time to think. Would he be open to meeting in person to discuss specific terms? He agreed immediately. That night, sitting beside Dad's hospital bed as he slept peacefully, I reflected on the whirlwind of events that had transformed my life in just a few weeks. Dad woke up around midnight and caught me deep in thought, staring out the window at the city lights. Penny for your thoughts, he said, using the phrase he'd repeated throughout my childhood. I told him everything about Diane's termination, about the job offer, about my uncertainty regarding whether to return to a place that had caused me so much pain. He listened carefully, as he always did, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. When I finished explaining the situation, he was quiet for a long moment before asking, what do you want to do, sweetie? Not what you think you should do, or what would be practical, but what would make you genuinely happy. I admitted I didn't know. That part of me wanted to return and prove I could lead without becoming like Diane, while another part wanted to walk away completely and start fresh somewhere else. He nodded thoughtfully. Both are valid choices, but let me ask you this. When did you feel most like yourself this past week? I thought about it carefully. When I finally stood up to Diane, I said. When I stopped being a doormat and demanded the respect I deserved. He smiled. Exactly. You don't have to decide about the job right now, but whatever you choose, don't go back to being the old Jennifer who let people walk all over her. That woman was kind, but she was also afraid. I met with Ted the following week and laid out my conditions clearly and non-negotiably. Full remote work flexibility during Dad's treatment and recovery, the authority to choose my own team members, a substantial salary increase that reflected my actual contributions, and most importantly, a company-wide attribution policy ensuring that all employees receive proper credit for their work. To my surprise, he agreed to everything without hesitation, which confirmed that they were genuinely committed to change. I started my new role the following month, working primarily from Dad's house while he completed his treatment. The team I assembled respected me because I respected them in return. We not only completed the first phase of the Maxwell project ahead of schedule and under budget, but we also exceeded every performance metric the client had established. It wasn't always smooth sailing, though. Some people who had known the accommodating old Jennifer tried to take advantage, assuming I'd still be a pushover. They learned quickly that while I remained fair and collaborative, I was no longer a doormat. 6 months later, Dad finished his chemotherapy with excellent results. The doctors were cautiously optimistic that he was in remission, and his energy levels were gradually returning to normal. I had not only proven myself as an effective leader, but had also received a company-wide innovation award for developing a new campaign approach that other divisions were now adopting. The pharmaceutical industry expertise I'd gained was being leveraged across multiple accounts, making me genuinely valuable to the organization. One evening, as I was finishing up some strategic planning work, Dad came into the home office I'd set up in his spare room. You know what I was thinking about today? He asked, settling into the comfortable chair across from my desk. That day at the hospital when you came in after quitting your job. There was something completely different about you, like a weight had been lifted from your shoulders. I smiled, remembering that moment of clarity and empowerment. I remember that feeling, I said. Before that day, I was worried about you more than myself, he continued. Worried that you were letting life happen to you instead of making active choices about your future. It took me getting sick for you to finally put yourself first, and that bothered me more than the cancer did. Tears pricked my eyes as I realized the truth in his words. I'm sorry it took so long for me to find my backbone, I said. He reached over and squeezed my hand gently. Don't be sorry. We all learn our important lessons when we're ready to learn them, not a moment before. I'm just grateful I'm still around to see the strong woman you've become. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before he added with a grin. Your mother would be incredibly proud of you. She never took crap from anyone either, if you remember. That made me laugh out loud. Mom certainly hadn't been a pushover. She'd been fierce when protecting her family and principles. I'd forgotten how tough she could be, I admitted. Late that night, I found myself thinking about the person I used to be, always accommodating, always saying yes, always putting everyone else's needs before my own. I didn't hate that version of myself. She had been genuinely kind and well-intentioned. But she had also been afraid of conflict, afraid of disapproval, afraid of standing alone when it mattered. The woman I'd become wasn't fearless, but she faced her fears head on. She set clear boundaries, demanded respect, and received it far more often than the woman who had begged for scraps of recognition. The following week, I received an unexpected email that made me laugh out loud. It was from Ryan Walsh, asking if I had any openings on my team. He'd been reassigned after I took over the Maxwell account and was now working under a different manager who apparently made Diane look positively angelic by comparison. His email was carefully worded, mentioning that he'd heard I was a fair boss who gave credit where it was due and provided real growth opportunities. I stared at that email for a long time, thinking about how desperate I had once been for any acknowledgement, how I would have jumped at the chance to work for someone who valued me. Part of me wanted to ignore his request, to let him experience the same frustration and invisibility I had endured. But that wasn't who I wanted to be either. Being strong didn't mean being vindictive, and being fair didn't mean being weak. I replied professionally, offering him an interview opportunity without making any promises. I wasn't going to hand him anything, but I was willing to give him the fair consideration I'd wished someone would give me. Dad saw the email exchange over my shoulder as he brought me my afternoon coffee and chuckled. "You're a better person than I am," he said. I would have told him to go kick rocks and find another job entirely. I laughed and shook my head. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But I know I can be kind without being a doormat, and I can be firm without being cruel. Most importantly, I get to decide where my boundaries are now, not everyone else. He raised his coffee mug in a mock toast. "To boundaries," he said with a grin. "And to the daughter who finally found hers." I clinked my mug against his. "To boundaries," I echoed, "and to not confusing kindness with weakness ever again." It had been a long journey from the woman crying in that bathroom mirror to the confident leader sitting in her home office, making decisions that affected both her career and her team's success. But I wouldn't trade that transformation for anything, not even for the comfortable invisibility of always being nice. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop being so accommodating to everyone else. It doesn't mean becoming cruel or selfish. It just means making space for your own needs alongside others' demands. That moment in the bathroom, when I decided being nice wasn't working anymore, wasn't the end of kindness in my life. It was the beginning of self-respect, and remarkably, I discovered that those two qualities could coexist beautifully when you were brave enough to make room for both. 2 years later, I'm still at Davidson Media, now as a vice president overseeing multiple pharmaceutical accounts. I've built a division that's known for both excellence and ethics, where we credit every contributor by name on every project, regardless of how large or small their role. We've become the department that top talent wants to join, and our client retention rate is the highest in company history. Dad's cancer remains in remission, and he's taken up golf, though he complains constantly about his terrible swing. He comes to our office holiday parties each year and tells embarrassing stories about my childhood to anyone who will listen. Last month, Diane applied for a position in my department. She didn't recognize my married name on the job posting, so when she walked into the interview room and saw me sitting at the head of the table, her face went through about 5 distinct emotions in 3 seconds. I conducted the interview professionally, asked relevant questions about her experience and approach to team management, and thanked her for her time. I didn't hire her, not out of revenge, but because there were simply better candidates who demonstrated the collaborative spirit and ethical standards our team requires. As she was leaving, she paused at the door and said quietly, "You've really changed, Jennifer." I smiled genuinely and replied, "Yes, I have. Thank you for noticing." She looked confused by my response. "You're actually thanking me?" she asked incredulously. "In a strange way, yes," I said. "If you hadn't pushed me to my absolute breaking point, I might never have discovered my own strength. So thank you for being exactly who you were. It helped me become who I needed to be." She didn't know how to respond to that, so she just nodded awkwardly and left. That night, I told Dad about the interview, and he roared with laughter, slapping his knee like he always did when something particularly amused him. "The look on her face must have been absolutely priceless," he said between chuckles. It was, I admitted. But you know what's interesting? I actually meant what I said to her. I am grateful in a weird way. He nodded sagely. Sometimes our worst moments lead directly to our best decisions, and sometimes the people who hurt us most teach us the most valuable lessons about ourselves. I think about that bathroom mirror moment, often the tear-streaked face, the shaking hands, the absolute certainty that something fundamental had to change. It was definitely rock bottom for me professionally and emotionally, but it was also the foundation upon which I built everything else. So when people ask me about the moment I decided being nice wasn't working anymore, I tell them it wasn't really about stopping being nice at all. It was about finally learning to be nice to myself too. And that simple shift has made all the difference in the world.